Hello and welcome to the Captain Stevens channel. My name is Colin McGregor Stevens and I am a retired Canadian Army captain and a military museum curator. Today we're going to look at a number 4 Mark I Lee-Enfield. At first that doesn't sound special because they made several million of these, but this particular one is a very early example with all of the early features, and it was made by Long Branch in Canada. As well, it is all original. Most of these early rifles were used extensively, and as a result, they had many parts replaced over time. So let's have a little look at this one. It's marked on the left side wall, number 4, Mark I, Long Branch, 1941. Is it a 1941 rifle? Well, we'll see. The serial number is 1L314. Starting at the butt, we find a gray butt plate with the trap door for the usual oil bottle and pull through. The butt itself is an N marked 1, which is normal length. Canada made 4 different lengths of butts for the number 4 Lee-Enfield. B for Bantam was the very shortest one for very short soldiers. S for short, N for normal length, or there'd be no marking at all, and L for long. The cocking piece on this is the first type, a Mark I, often called a button cocking piece. The idea behind this is if you're bayonet fighting and you stab an opponent, that you're not going to hurt the web of your hand on the cocking piece. But they later simplified that to speed up production. The back sight, or rear sight, is a Mark I. This has the turning knob on top for very precise sighting. That's if you have time to make your choices, or for sighting in. However, for battle, you have a battle aperture sight back here, which is set so that it's always ready. The serial number is marked on both the left side of the body socket and also on the back of the bolt handle. And it is marked on the underside of the forend, cross grain here. The magazines on the Canadian Long Branch rifles were not serial numbered, although sometimes in service with Britain or other countries, they were numbered to match the rifle. The rear handguard has grooves in it. The forward handguard has a hidden channel because it has to accommodate the hinged upper band. This is the first pattern, quite rare. The idea being you could just undo the screw and then it opens up like a butterfly and can be lifted off. That was later simplified without a hinge. But the wood of the forward handguard had to have a slot milled into it to make room for the hinge. The most distinctive feature is the front sight guard. This is the Mark I, often called the wasp waist. And that's because of the profile. When you look at it from the front, it comes in on each side, and that took extra machining. So very quickly, in 1942, they switched to a simple flat side, which required less work. And the Americans, with their Stephen Savage rifles, went even further, coming up with a stamped metal version. And then we have standard bayonet lugs on the front. Now the difference between a Mark I and a Mark I Star. On the Mark I, we have a little part we push down here. So when we open the bolt, we push down on that, pull the bolt back the rest of the way, then we can rotate the bolt head and remove the bolt. To install it, we reverse the process, pressing down on that, bolt head down so it lines up with the track, and then we can close the bolt. What they changed when they went to the Mark I, and this was only done in North America, at both Stephen Savage and at Long Branch, was they did away with this mechanism here. So that simplified production, and they cut a slot in the track so that when the bolt was lined up with it, you could just rotate the bolt head up, right? And then they also gave a greater clearance under the charger bridge here so the bolt could be removed. Also, you'll notice I lifted the back sight, or the rear sight, to clear it because this early Mark I sight would prevent the bolt head from being removed. So let's talk about markings. We have an N mark here, which is for the length of the butt. On the underside of the butt, we have the Long Branch, C broad arrow, and a stadium mark. Inside that stadium is a tiny C with the arrow inside, the Canadian issue mark, and the inspector's number. On the left side of the body, we have the body socket with the serial number 1L314. On the back of the bolt handle, we have the same number. On the left sidewall, we have the manufacturer's markings. Number 4, Mark I, Long Branch, 1941. One of the nice features about this particular rifle is it has a very large C broad arrow stamped on top of the receiver ring here. This is the only one I've seen, but there are other examples. And it's believed that this rifle remained in Canadian service. On the back sight, we have a tiny C broad arrow with the arrow inside the C. That was for Canadian issue mark. And we have LB, the monogram with the two letters are combined, for Long Branch. Under the forend, we have the Long Branch mark and the serial number of the rifle. Be a C broad arrow there as well. On the left side of the upper band, we have a C broad arrow. One other marking that I'll mention is CCM on here. This is Canadian Cycle and Motor Company Limited in Canada. This was a subcontractor producing some of the wood fittings. There were a few other minor subcontractors, but basically Long Branch made the vast majority of the rifle. And on the front of the front sight protector, we have a C broad arrow and a Long Branch monogram. It's a 1941 rifle, right? Well, yes and no. What happened was that there were delays in producing the barrels, the complex rear sight, or back sight as the British called it, and the cocking piece. Those three items slowed down production. So in September 1941, this new factory at Long Branch, called Small Arms Limited, had produced 200 of these No. 4 Mark I rifles. By 31 December 1941, they had produced 7,589. But this one is serial number 1L314, which equates to 10,314. So what's going on? Well, if you remove the rear handguard on these rifles, you'll find that the barrel is dated. Parts were delayed, barrel, back sight, cocking piece, so that some of the rifles, although they're dated 1941 on the body, were actually assembled in early 1942. So, is it a 1941 rifle or 1942? It's actually both. Now, the standard bayonet for these rifles was a No. 4 Mark I bayonet. This particular one is British made by Singer, which is marked SMC, Singer Machine Company. Now, the Mark I bayonet is what's called a cruciform blade. It has 4 grooves milled into it. Again, that slowed down production. The point is very sharp. Later models, the blade is simply a tapered shaft, no grooves in it. Now, the first examples of the No. 4 Mark I bayonet were made at Royal Small Arms Factory, Enfield. They were made for the trials rifles, the No. 1 Mark VI, the No. 4 Mark I in 1931 and 1933, and then Singer produced them in 1941, 50,000 of these. So in general, they're scarce. They're desirable for collectors. What's special about this particular one is that it has the Canadian C broad arrow mark on it. This is one of a small batch that were located at Downsview in Ontario. The No. 4 Mark I bayonet is for this No. 4 Mark I rifle, but any of the model No. 4 bayonets and some of the others will fit. The scabbard is what we know now as a standard scabbard for the No. 4 Mark I bayonets and a Mark II, etc. But the frog is an earlier production one. This one dated 1940, and it's made for the pattern 1907 sword bayonet. What they did was they came up with this little adapter piece here that allowed the smaller No. 4 Mark I bayonet scabbard to be used with the earlier pattern 1907 frog. This way it didn't slip down too far, it could still be used. This sling is also dated 1941. It's a Canadian issue. This is one of the harder to find examples in original condition. Most of them were heavily used and had parts replaced due to wear and tear, and this particular example appears to be all original. Anyway, hope you've enjoyed the video, and thank you very much for watching. Feel free to watch my other videos. Goodbye.